Hello, this is the Arts Hour. I'm Nikki Bedi, and I am delighted, excited, and privileged to be talking to the creator of the Apple TV Plus hit series, Severance. Dan, it is the most extraordinary piece of television I think we've had this century. It is so original. It is the rhythm is so different. The visuals, obviously, but how much of what we see in terms of a sterile environment and only a certain amount of colours, how much of that was written in by you?
Some of it. It's funny, the MDR office where most of it takes place is very similar to what I had in my head. And a lot of that was on the page. You know, we talked about there being this really wide open space with this strangely low ceiling and this kind of sickeningly green carpet. And then the four, desks in the middle. And then there are other spaces that look nothing like what I envisioned. And that's, in a way, even better because it's just a wonderful surprise. You walk in and you go, oh, that's where this is. I didn't really see it, but now I see it.
Was it a personal idea, the idea of Severance, that you would have liked to have applied in a certain part of your life? What was it that you were feeling that made you think, I would like to have a separate self?
It was just the fantasy of being able to skip ahead to the end of a day that you weren't particularly looking forward to. You know, I knew that it was going to be a bit of a slog, and thought, man, if I could just give up those next 8 hours and walk away with the paycheck, I would totally do that.
I've heard all kinds of people compare what you have done with Michel Gondry's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, some of Chris Nolan's work, etc. I see what they might mean in that this is sort of sci-fi, but in a grounded, current possibility way.
Yeah.
Do you see it like that?
Absolutely. And I love Eternal Sunshine. That was, that came out while I was in college. But my favorite thing about that movie is how sort of low tech it seems, that the office where he goes in to get the procedure looks like a dentist's office, and it just feels lived in. It feels real. It doesn't feel like sci-fi, even though it is.
These are dream roles for the actors, the severed characters, because they have two people to portray. Have you written with the actors in mind? Maybe not for the first season, but for this second season?
Yeah, it makes it so much easier. Writing for Dylan in the first season was great because we were discovering who he was, but I didn't have Zach Cherry's voice in my head yet.
Right.
And
or his beautiful face.
His beautiful, beautiful face, which I make sure to tell him every time I see him how beautiful his face is. He's asked me to stop, but I'm not going to. Same with, Tramell Tillman or Britt Lauer or any of these amazing actors. You just, as soon as you have their voice in your head, it just becomes that much easier to write for them. The only person who I sort of had in mind from the beginning actually was Adam Scott.
Right.
Because I was a big fan of his from Parks and Rec and Party Down. And those are two great workplace comedies. And I thought it would be really interesting to take people's expectation of him as an actor in workplace comedies and show this twisted version of it. So when Ben first suggested Adam for the role, I was extremely excited because he really was someone I had in mind as I first wrote it.
So do your actors, did they in season one start to know what their backstories were, or has this unfolded? I'm interested to know about that genesis.
Some of them wanted to know and some didn't.
But you knew, did you?
I did. I mean, and there are elements that have changed, I'll be totally honest. Like there are some things that we thought about a character's backstory that over time we found something else and we moved to. But for the most part, it's been the same. And I wrote up documents for each of the actors to sort of give them, it's like, here's a couple of pages about where your actor or where your character came from.
Oh, wow.
And most
of them... Is that normal?
No, I've since found out it's not. I kind of did it because I had no idea how TV worked or what was expected of me. And I thought, well, this will be good. This I'm going to cover all my bases. But then I've later found out that oftentimes you don't do that.
What would you say the theme of the show is?
An overarching theme is definitely sort of disassociation and the reasons why we might cut ourselves off from certain pieces of ourselves that we don't like, or parts of our lives that are painful for us. I think that a lot of people, when they see the show, they think, oh, the Innie's life would be such torture and the Outie's life would be so great. But I think there's another side to that too, which is that there's a comfort in losing yourself in work. It can be like a drug, like any other, where you go and it's a way to cut yourself off from whatever personal issues are going on for you outside. It's just kind of about how the temptation, but also the danger of allowing yourself to be less than human in a work setting.
Which is why so many people see this as about real world corporate culture. Do you think that's universal in workplaces, or is it only a type of corporation?
I certainly think it's common. I think that, I've had people I know who work for big corporations who they find themselves talking in the sort of in the lingo of that place without even realizing it. And
Welcome to the BBC.
and I think that free will as it relates to identity is a big part of the show, because to what you said earlier, it's about who are you, and how much freedom do you have to determine the answer to that question. And something that inevitably comes up is, to what degree are the Innies and the Outies the same people? Are they one person or are they two separate people? And it's not a question, it's not like that's a question that we know the answer to and we're withholding. We don't know the answer to that because it's based on some very sort of basic, hard to answer questions about what it means to be human and nature versus nurture. And would you have been a different person if you had grown up in a vastly different experience? Would you have been, could you have been somebody unethical or immoral or cruel if you had been raised a different way? And these are questions that I think people have always sort of pondered, and we're just trying to come at them from a slightly different way.
Is there anything about the way in which these workers, the Innies, are being manipulated that is to do with a cult? Is there a sort of cult element to this?
There definitely is. We talked a lot in the writers' room for all the seasons that we've done about the nature of cults and the nature of that kind of intellectual influence that a person or an organization can hold over you. And you can see some similar tactics between those and then like big companies who are trying to inspire loyalty and are telling people like, we're a family here. And are encouraging people to give of themselves more and more and more, and oftentimes there's a cult of personality surrounding that. Be it a CEO or a founder of the company, they take on that role of the cult leader in a way.
It has obviously spawned millions, probably more, memes. Have you been surprised, incidentally, at the way Reddits, subreddits, memes, social media, just this mania, Severance mania, has it surprised you?
It has surprised me because I always thought that the show was going to be a lot more niche than it's turned out to be, especially now that the second season is out. I part of me thought that it was just too weird or too goofy or too dark to hit in that way. And the fact that people have not only found it, but been willing to invest their own creativity into it in that way through art or through fan theories or fan fiction or what have you is it's an incredible honor. It's an incredible honor, and it's a little bit intimidating because I want to continue to make something that is worthy of that kind of affection. And I want to make sure that people feel like the attention and energy they put into it is returned in kind.
If a particular fan theory ended up working its way into season 3, 4, 7, 9, would you credit the fan?
I think I would have to, although that's something that I've been very conscious of and tried. Generally, I've had to avoid Reddit, or at least tried to, as we're in the process of crafting each new season. I sort of have to take a break from it.
Yeah.
Because, in part, it's just there's so many good theories, and ultimately I want to stay true to the original vision that we've had of the show.
When a series like this takes off in the way that Severance did, I'm interested to know whether you have it all plotted out. And is there an ending for the whole story in mind? Or do you have to adapt according to the seasons that come up?
There is an endpoint in mind, and that's basically been there since the beginning. I'm fortunate enough that we haven't had to really change that on an essential level, but there are definitely tweaks that have happened, and you have to be open to falling in love with a character or a story point or something that you didn't expect to love. Milchik is a great example of a character that I didn't. I always liked him and thought that this was going to be a really fun role, but he was more sort of second fiddle to Cobell in the pilot script, and it really wasn't until Tramell Tillman came in and I suddenly was like, oh, that's the character. That it was unexpected, and suddenly we had this strange new character like no one I'd ever seen before. And so he became a more integral part of the show than I had originally conceived.
Is this kind of prestige TV only now able to be made by streamers? Because, well, I heard that each episode probably costs about $20 million. I don't know if that's true or not. But no one can compete with that level of financing, can they? And that permission for creativity.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've been very lucky, and I don't know if I'd say it can only be done by streamers. I think that that TV is always changing, and so anything I try to say about that might be incorrect 2, 3, 5 years from now.
Yeah.
But certainly it's put us in a unique position to put the time and the money into the show that we needed to.
Is there a standout moment from this last season that when you look at it, in terms of the dialogue and the writing, you think, wow, I did that, I pulled that off?
Well, I have to say the scene that starts out our finale, which, and I don't want to spoil too much for people who haven't seen it, but in which we have this sort of contact between Mark and himself. It's that was a scene that as I was writing it, and I'd always wanted to do that scene. But as I was writing it, I thought, maybe 50-50 shot this will work, because it was it was just very complex and depended so much on the performance and certainly on the editing. And that scene could have come across very cumbersome. But Ben I wrote it, and Ben pretty much immediately seemed to pick up on it and said, yeah, okay, I can do this. And worked with our editor, and I openly wept when I saw that scene because I had been so nervous about it, and the fact that it actually came together was great.
Is Lumon's end goal with Severance to be able to offer a kind of immortality?
That is something that I think I would face my own mortality if I answered that question sooner than I might like.
Dan, this has been an absolute joy and privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a thing.